Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Swami, chapter 34, volume 1, May 12, 1971. In his quarters in Sydney, Prabhupada wrote the preface to the upcoming edition of Bhagavad Gita as it is. The Macmillan Company had now agreed to print the unabridged manuscript. The contract was signed, the book was being readied for printing, only the preface remained to be written. Prabhupada wrote in his preface that although he was known for starting the Krishna consciousness movement in America, actually the original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself. Giving all credit for his own achievements to his spiritual master, Prabhupada said the only qualification he himself had was that he had tried to present Bhagavad Gita as it is, without any adulteration. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he, a person, has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and he demands it. One has to understand the central point of Bhagavad Gita. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the whole world this central point. And because we are not polluting the theme of Bhagavad Gita as it is, anyone seriously interested in deriving benefit by studying the Bhagavad Gita must take help from the Krishna consciousness movement for practical understanding of Bhagavad Gita under the direct guidance of the Lord. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, as we have presented it here. And even if one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success. See, this other editions of Bhagavad Gita, I mean, even the writer has not become a devotee, but to speak of the readers. I mean, most of the editions, I'm not talking about the Vaishnava editions. So that is why that was the need of Prabhupada writing Bhagavad Gita as it is, giving his own commentary. As Prabhupada explained in his preface, he was publishing the full Gita manuscript to establish the Krishna consciousness movement more soundly and progressively. He would do this by presenting transcendental literature like Bhagavad Gita. But he would also have to go, as Lord Chaitanya has said, to every town and village, either personally or through his agents, his disciples. And wherever he went, he would preach Bhagavad Gita to whoever would listen. Tomorrow, Prabhupada would leave Australia for a big Pandal festival in Calcutta, then on to Moscow, Paris, Los Angeles. Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita that no servant is more dear to him than one who teaches Bhagavad Gita to the devotees. So this he says in 18th chapter, after Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Pariteja, that verse, he says, no one is more dear to me than the one who preaches this message. And Prabhupada in all his activities, whether writing a preface, lecturing to the prostitutes and drug addicts, teaching a disciple to cook chapatis without burning them, or planning grand projects yet to come, was always teaching Bhagavad Gita, and therefore was always the dearest servant of Lord Krishna. See, that is why preaching is very, very important. First, we have to learn, and preach doesn't mean that we have to learn all the scriptures before we can preach. No. Whatever we have understood, we just tell others convincingly. Because if we are convinced, we can help others also. Prabhupada stood before the deities of Radha Gopinath with folded hands. After less than a week in Sydney, he was leaving. He knew that the devotees were not up to the standard required for worshipping Radha and Krishna. And he knew he was taking a risk, entrusting the worship to neophyte disciples. Yet, as an empowered Acharya and as the representative of Lord Chaitanya, he had to implant Krishna consciousness anywhere it might take root. The world was in desperate need. If his disciples followed the process he had given them, chanting, hearing, observing regulatory principles, he knew they would quickly become purified. So this is the whole process. Just follow the process and one becomes purified. Purified is what? Purification of our consciousness from material to spiritual, from thinking that I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller, I'm the proprietor, to understanding Krishna is the one, everything, controller, proprietor, enjoyer. And all I have to do is serve him. And in the process, I become happy. It's not like person doesn't achieve happiness in serving Krishna. He achieves more happiness than one can achieve while just doing material things. But that shift of faith, the paradigm shift has to happen. And that happens in the association of devotees. Slowly, slowly, slowly. We take small steps, baby steps, and then we keep on walking, and then we enjoy, we learn, then faith increases, and slowly, slowly, slowly we do more and more and more. He had given an analogy. Although in material life, a man must first become a highly qualified lawyer before sitting on the judge's bench. In Krishna consciousness, a sincere devotee is first allowed to sit on the bench to become a Brahman. And later, by the mercy of the holy name and the spiritual master, he becomes qualified. The devotees in Sydney, however, were particularly mature, and Prabhupada made an extraordinary request of Radha Gopinath. Now I am leaving you in the hands of the Malechas. I cannot take the responsibility. You please guide these boys and girls and give them the intelligence to worship you very nice. This is how he established temples all over. And it was Prabhupada was praying, and Radha and Krishna, Gaurnita, Jagannath, they had to respond. And they took care of the devotees. Calcutta, May 13, 1971. So May 12th he was in Sydney, May 13th in Calcutta. Prabhupada arrived just in time for the 10-day Calcutta Pandal festival. On his orders, Giriraj and Tamal Krishna had come to organize the festival, just as they had the one in Bombay. Prabhupada had written to Jayapataka Goswami, president of ISKCON Calcutta. In the Sankirtan festival Pandal, if a very big kitchen arrangement can be made, then we shall distribute prasadam daily. Try to make this arrangement, puri, halwa, khichdi. Whatever they can be arranged as much as possible. Tamal and Giriraj have all the ideas. Attendance surpassed that of the Bombay Pandal, with 20 to 30,000 people attending daily, including ministers of parliament and other distinguished speakers. It was one of the biggest religious functions Calcutta had ever seen. The whole city became aware of the strength of the Hare Krishna movement. In the early afternoon, the devotees would begin selling Prabhupada's books from the booth, performing kirtan on stage, and distributing prasadam to the masses. Around 6:30, the evening program would begin with a long, intense kirtan, which would increase in its fervor as Prabhupada arrived for the evening aarti before the deities of Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada would lecture, sometimes in Bengali and sometimes in English. Afterwards, the devotees would show slides of the Krishna consciousness movement around the world, and Prabhupada would answer questions from the audience. After the program, people would push forward to receive a morsel of the prasadam that had been offered to the deity. Naxalite terrorists threatened Prabhupada's life. So they are there from the beginning. Somehow in Calcutta or West Bengal, these communists, they've always taken hold. These young communist terrorists who had been active in Calcutta during Prabhupada's visit of 1970 had never disturbed him until now. Their tactic was to approach prominent businessmen in their homes or on the street and force them into cooperation with Naxalite political objectives. If a businessman refused, the Naxalites would burn his home or place of business or even assassinate him. It still goes on. The Naxalites who were eager for all of the Bengal to turn from their religious traditions and embrace communism saw Prabhupada rekindle the religious spirit in Calcutta. Prabhupada's tremendous crowd gathering pandal that concluded was undermining the principles of communism. Lie or die, read the note Prabhupada received. He informed the police who regretted the inability to help. Even police cannot help against the communists. The whole of Calcutta, they said, was in terror of the Naxalites. Prabhupada, however, refused to be intimidated. He would not fly. Even if they were to attack him, he said, what better way for a Vaishnava to leave his body than while preaching the glories of the Lord? The next night, as Prabhupada came before the crowd to speak, he noticed a group of rowdy young men, Naxalites, near the stage. They were protesting the preferential seating of certain dignitaries on stage. When one young radical shouted that the radicals themselves wanted to dance on stage, the devotees invited them to join in the kirtan. The Naxalites backed down but continued shouting and disrupting the meeting. They even began banging the seats of the wooden folding chairs, calling out Naxalite slogans and threatening to burn the place down. Others in the audience began talking nervously themselves, increasing the commotion. In a vain attempt to bring order, some of the devotees threatened the dissenters, pushing and scuffling broke out in the audience. So, nothing new, this all happened. Chintamani prakara sadma kalpa vriksha lakshavriteshu surabhi ravipalayanta. Prabhupada's voice rang over the powerful loudspeaker system, appearing uninterested in the crowd, depending only on Krishna. He began singing prayers from Brahma Samhita. And within minutes, everyone quieted. Those who wanted to leave, left. And those who wanted to stay, sat down. The crowd subdued. Prabhupada went. Several more fly or die notes came, and the Naxalites returned the next night, threatening again to burn the pandal. Call them, Prabhupada said. I'll meet with them. The devotees thought it unsafe, but Prabhupada insisted. In a small room behind the pandal, Prabhupada spoke with the hostile youths. They were angry and disrespectful at first, but as Prabhupada explained to them the Vedic concept of communism, with Krishna at the center, he caught their interest. They agreed to allow Prabhupada's meetings to continue without any further disruptions. Only Prabhupada could do that. It's so amazing. Naxalites, communists, they wanted to burn the pandal down, giving threatening messages to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada explained to them the real communism. Somehow, this communist or Naxalite philosophy, whatever you want to call it, it just attracts people. Why? Communism, what it means is all the wealth of the state belongs to everybody. Means there should not be any wealthy person, any businessman making more than the others. But if there is no capitalism. Because capitalism, if the greed is too much, then they just keep it for themselves, they don't distribute. But even capitalists, like America, a capitalist country, they cannot just keep everything for themselves. They have to work with the other classes to produce something, even industry or anything else. So to work with other classes means they have to keep them happy also. They have to pay them properly, cannot exploit them. That is where the government comes in. Cannot exploit people. You have to pay them properly, take care of them. And then whatever gains you have, you just enjoy. But communists, no. Nobody should have more than the others. Everybody should be same. No, everybody cannot be same. If the industrialist is investing his money, energy, intelligence to grow a business, then he has every right to keep the profits. At the same time, he has to take care of people. So what Prabhupada was explaining, the spiritual communism, where Krishna owns everything. Obviously, Krishna owns everything. But everybody has to work in that mood that Krishna is in the center. Krishna owns everything. I'm just a servant of Krishna. But in that mood, even if he becomes a king, one can become a king, one can become a teacher or whatever, businessman, like Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and Brahmins. So Vaishya class means businessman. So if they're businessmen, if they have money with Krishna in the center, They take care of other classes, but if they have bigger house, better properties, why not? What's wrong? But this part, communists don't like. What they promote is, oh, everybody is equal. Of course, that they say only theoretically. The idea is the people who are not intelligent, very intelligent or very strong, they should not work according to them. No, that is where they are wrong. But in West Bengal, it's still that mood is there. But that is why it's not growing as much as it should have. Achyutanand Swami, the last night of the 10-day Pandal program was a grand finale with over 40,000 people attending. I had just stepped out to get sugarcane juice. The Pandal was completely packed when I left. But when I got outside, I saw rivers of people flowing through the 4 main gates into the Pandal tent. I thought this must be Krishna's mystic power because the climax of the event was a big procession, beginning at the Pandal and going up Park Street to the ISKCON temple on Albert Road. The deities of Radha and Govinda rode on a palanquin to the temple, where they were placed on the altar. After an arti in the temple, the remaining crowd dispersed. Achyutanand Swami was standing next to Prabhupada that night in the Calcutta temple. Prabhupada, he said, someone put Krishna's flute in backward. Prabhupada looked, it was backward. Krishna is all powerful, he said, turning to Achyutanand Swami. He can play from the back end also. Srila Prabhupada was still striving for a plot of land in Mayapur, having abandoned the idea that his god brothers in Mayapur might help. He had been working through Bengali friends in negotiating with Muslim farmers in Mayapur. On returning from Australia, Prabhupada had sent Tamal Krishna to Mayapur with orders not to come back until he had purchased land. Tamal Krishna's mission was successful, and after 6 days, he returned to Prabhupada in Calcutta, having purchased 9 bighas or 3 acres in Mayapur. Now, even that was very spectacular event, actually. Tamal Krishna Maharaj explained in one of the classes. So he was sent along with another, I don't know who also went with him. So 2 of them were there. And all these Muslim farmers in Mayapur, Bengalis, and because they had bad experience earlier, they didn't trust anybody, especially the foreigners. But the deal had to be made. So they asked Tamal Krishna Maharaj to bring money, cash, in small notes, small denominations, not big. I don't know what was a big note at that time. And it took, like it says, after 6 days he returned to Prabhupada in Calcutta. So it took them all these days. And when they went with the money, all these farmers, Muslims, they showed up with knives and machetes in their hands to make sure nothing goes wrong. And then to make sure all this money is legal, they made Tamal Krishna Maharaj and another, I don't know who it was, either Achyutanand Maharaj or somebody else was there with them. They made them write down the serial number of all the notes on a piece of paper. And there were so many because they were carrying small denominations. So they had to write it down, and there was electricity was a problem. So in the light of lamps or candles, they are sitting and writing down everything. And in the middle of all this Muslim farmers with knives and machetes in their hands. And here, and it was not like there was so many telephones at that time and they were giving messages to Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't know anything what was happening in Mayapur. Of course, Prabhupada knew inside, but outwardly he didn't know anything. And he was really worried, waiting for Tamalkash Maharaj. And finally, that one night, Tamalkash Maharaj came with this 3 acres of land in Mayapur, purchased. And he came, Prabhupada was, at night he came, Prabhupada was in his room translating, writing his commentary, recording his commentaries. And Tamalkash Maharaj said, I went and I paid respects to Prabhupada and gave him the papers. He said, the land is yours. And Prabhupada was relieved, very relieved, and he said, okay, now you can go take rest. So devotees have done tremendous service and taken tremendous risks to do this service for Prabhupada, for ISKCON, for the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Also, maybe later it is explained more about when Mayapur temple was being built. More incidents happened, but this was really nobody expected that Tamalkash Maharaj can go and buy 3 acres of land in Mayapur, and that was a beginning. And now, obviously, it has grown. Yes, I think I don't know about 1,000 acres or maybe more. But working in West Bengal has always been an issue, always. But Prabhupada really made it happen. Conceiving the value of Mayapur was difficult for the devotees, however. One devotee journeyed from Calcutta to see the new ISKCON property. On returning, he asked Prabhupada, what are we going to do there? It's just a big empty field. Nothing is there. Because there are no factories and cars, Prabhupada replied, therefore you think there is nothing to do. But we are going to chant Hare Krishna in Mayapur. We'll build a big temple there, and all the devotees in the world can go out and chant Hare Krishna in the place of Lord Chaitanya's birth. On May 28th, Prabhupada wrote, you will be glad to learn that we have purchased about 5 acres of land in Mayapur, the birth site of Lord Chaitanya, and we have proposed to hold a nice festival there from Janmashtami Day for 2 weeks. At that time, the foundation stone will be set down. I wish that all leading disciples come to India at that time. There are 50 branches, so at least one from each branch should attend this function. And also, for those who like this video Archana Mataji sent, and there are other videos also, they say, oh, ISKCON is collecting money in India and sending it to America and this and that. When Mayapur temple was being built, Mayapur, Vrindavan and Bombay, when Prabhupada was there, where was the money coming from? In India, they were not giving money, or not that much money. All the money was coming from America and Europe. And money from where? Book distribution. Devotees were distributing books and whatever collections were there. They would send half of those collections to Prabhupada for temple building. Half was for more books printing. So this was the dedication, the sacrifice. So temples were sending money to Prabhupada to build all these big temples in India. So this point nobody knows and nobody will talk about those videos. But that is the truth. June 1971. For months, Prabhupada had been planning to visit Moscow. Aside from his desire to preach to the Russian people, he had a specific meeting in mind with the Russian Indology professor, G.G. Kotovsky. Professor Kotovsky headed the Department of Indian and South Asian Studies at Moscow's USSR Academy of Sciences, and Prabhupada had been corresponding with him for a year. Krishnadas in West Germany, with the help of Dr. Bernhardt of the University of Hamburg, had obtained the names of other Russian scholars of Indology. A letter to Krishnadas in December of 1970 had revealed Prabhupada's plans for preaching in Russia. I'm very encouraged to see your enthusiasm for preaching this message to the Russian people, and your idea to send letters with the help of Dr. Bernhardt is very good. He's a big scholar and he also appreciates our movement. So if you arrange a tour of Russia for me, I'm prepared to accept. Let us see what Krishna desires. If we can go to Russia with a World Sankirtan Party, I'm certain that it will be very much appreciated and people will see the real peace movement is chanting process, chanting the holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So try for it. Srila Prabhupada had coached Krishnadas on how to best cultivate the Russian Indologists. You can ask them some questions like, what's the ultimate goal of life? What is your ideal ultimate goal of life? What's the difference between animal and human life? Why is religion accepted by all kinds of civilized societies? What is your conception of the original creation? Is in this way, question may be put to find out what is their standing. We do not grudge an atheist provided he has got some philosophical standing. In this way, try to elicit some answers from the philosopher. If you can finally establish one Moscow center, it will be a great credit to you. So far, studying Russian language, it is not necessary. But if you do it, if you do so, it is all right. I want very much a center in Russia. So for the time being, I shall desire that Moscow center. In Moscow, nobody can even think of a preaching center in Moscow at that time. In March 1971, Professor G.G. Kotowski had replied to Krishnadas's letter. I thank you for your information about Swami Bhaktivedanta's lecturing tour. If he would come to Moscow, the Soviet scholars doing research in ancient Indian culture would be very happy to meet him in the Institute of Oriental Studies, USSR Academy of Sciences. I would be thankful to you for your information on the dates of Swami Bhaktivedanta's arrival and stay in the USSR. Yes, at that time it was USSR. Srila Prabhupada had personally replied to Professor Kotowski, it was understood that you and your university are interested in hearing about Krishna culture and philosophy. This ancient Krishna culture and philosophy is the oldest in the world or in the universe. At least from a historical point of view, it's not less than 5,000 years old. Perhaps you may know that I've started this cultural movement since 1966 and is already spreading all over the world. Krishna culture is so popular in India that even the government attracts many foreigners by Air India. Timetable to visit Vrindavan, land of Krishna culture. Enclosed, please find one page from the latest Air India timetable, April 1971, wherein the Krishna culture is depicted for general attraction. My life is dedicated to spreading this Krishna culture all over the world. I think if you give me a chance to speak about the great Krishna culture and philosophy in your country, you will very much appreciate this simple program with great profit. This culture is so well planned that it would be acceptable by any thoughtful man throughout the whole world. This culture is so well planned. But the problem is, nobody is there to present it properly. Prabhupada did it very methodically. So anybody and everybody can take it up. Having preached a year in the Eastern Hemisphere, Prabhupada was eager to return to the West and he planned to fly to Moscow and then on to Europe. For Prabhupada and his traveling companions, Shyam Sundar and Arvinda, getting tourist visas for Russia was simple. They would take a 5-day government-controlled tour with every activity planned by the Soviet Tourist Bureau and everything paid for in advance. Captain Lal, the pilot of the flight to Moscow, considered Prabhupada an important passenger and came back to visit him during the flight. This spoke of Prabhupada's movement, his chances for lecturing in Moscow and of Bombay, where Prabhupada was trying to purchase land. Captain Lal invited Prabhupada to the cockpit, and Prabhupada came and sat behind the captain, asking technical questions about the equipment and the flight. Prabhupada and Captain Lal agreed to meet again in Moscow. Oh. Now nobody can enter the cockpit except the crew. Prabhupada, his secretary, and his servant cleared Soviet customs and immigration quickly and smoothly, and a government tourist guide escorted them by limousine to the Hotel National. The hotel near Red Square, Lenin's tomb, and the Kremlin was expensive, but plain. Prabhupada found his room dingy and cramped, with barely space for a bed and 2 chairs. The room for Shyamsundar and Arvind was far away. And Prabhupada decided that Arvind should share the room with him instead, crowding Prabhupada's room all the more. So this is what communism does. Can't even provide proper facilities. Of course, although it was expensive hotel. No competition, because there is no competition. Everything is controlled. So government does whatever they want to. Private capitalism, there is so much of competition that they know the customer will run away if you don't give the proper facilities. Arvind told the hotel manager that they would not eat the hotel fare, but would have to cook their own meals. The manager refused at first, but finally allowed them use of the maid's kitchen. That problem solved. The next was getting food. Prabhupada sent Shyam Sundar out. Across the street, Shyam Sundar found a milk and yogurt store. But he returned to Prabhupada's room without any fruit, vegetables, or rice. Prabhupada sent him out again, and this time Shyam Sundar was gone practically all day, returning with only a couple of cabbages. Prabhupada sent him out the next day for rice, when Shyamsundar returned with rice after several hours. Prabhupada saw that it was a poor North Korean variety, very hard. Prabhupada asked for fruit, but Shyamsundar had to hike for miles through the city to find any fresh, a few red cherries. See, nobody wants to work in communism. They know government will just provide me with everything. Why should I work? And of course, then there was rationing of everything. Controlled, everything is controlled. And this is how actually India was also in the beginning, after independence. Everything was controlled, rationed. I remember when my father had to buy a scooter, he had to put in the application, and then after many months, we got a scooter. Why? I mean, now you can practically just walk in any store, any showroom and buy any car, whatever you want. But that time everything was controlled, so much of bureaucracy, red tape. That was a problem. Prabhupada remained peaceful and regulated, keeping to his daily schedule. He would rise early and translate, and in the cool of early morning, he would go out for a walk through the all but deserted streets. Prabhupada wearing his saffron chadar, stored quickly. Shyam Sundar sometimes running ahead to photograph. As they would pass Lenin's mausoleum, a queue would already be forming. Just see, Prabhupada commented one morning, that is their God. The people don't understand the difference between the body and the spirit. They accept the body as a real person. Prabhupada appreciated the sparseness of the traffic, means there was hardly any traffic. Some trolleys and bicycles, but mostly pedestrians. As he walked among the old, ornate buildings, he saw elderly women posing the wide streets, a good practice, he said. The Russian people appeared to live structured, regulated lives, much more so than the Americans. These simple, austere people, unspoiled by the rampant hedonism so common in America, were fertile for Krishna consciousness, but devoid of spiritual sustenance. They appeared morose. Of course, like Prabhupada mentioned about hedonism, so common in America. Yes, capitalism has its own negative aspects also. So much of money, facilities make people hippies and or just eat, drink and be merry, that kind of life. That's also not good. Prabhupada had Shyam Sundar arrange a meeting with Professor Kotowski and invite Captain Lal to come along. The tourist bureau provided a car and guide, and Prabhupada and his party rode outside the city to Professor Kotowski's office in an old white brick building at the Academy of Sciences. Okay, so I guess we can stop here because this chapter goes on for some more time. See, anybody has any questions or comments?
क्या मुझे कितना हार्ड वर्क है इस फोन को स्टैब्लिश करने में लाइक अमेजिंग
Oh yeah, easy नहीं है.
हाँ इट्स नॉट दैट इजी एंड पीपल कम ऑन पॉडकास्ट एंड बकवास करके चले जाते हैं सॉरी टू से
तो बोलने वाले तो कुछ भी बोल देते हैं ना, उनका क्या
आई
जाता
नो, लाइक बट हर्ट करता है, मुझे अच्छा नहीं लगता ये सब ना।
है। So we have to preach by example, preach by uh, words, everything. We have to preach.
थैंक यू सो मच प्रभु जी। हरे
Thank you.
कृष्ण। जय
Thank
श्री
you.
प्रभुपाद।
थैंक यू
Yes.
प्रभु जी। हरे
Thank you.
कृष्णा।